I am 30 years old and was happily married to my 30-year-old wife. We had been married for around 6 years. I will refer to her from here on as Sarah. We traveled, ate together and spent time together basically every night for the first 6 years of the marriage. During 2019, I started to see some warning signs that, in retrospect, should have told me something was up. In early 2019, I had to be out of town for a work conference, the first time that I had ever been gone overnight from home without her. She immediately suggested that her friend might visit and even stay over those days. For context, this friend was a 29-year-old guy whom I'll refer to as Mark. He is someone she texted all the time, they were close friends and I know she had been intimate with him before we met. I put my foot down and said no, pointing out he never came over in 6 years, except the one time I was gone. While she got mad, she respected my wishes to the best of my knowledge and the scenes from the security cameras. Now we arrive at the end of 2019. As we are in a movie theater together, I notice her writing messages to someone on her Apple Watch during the movie. This was very unusual for her to do, and the messages, although I can't remember them, were a bit intense for a coworker at a new job, but nothing overtly sexual or romantic. I ask her about it after the movie and she brushes it off. Her behavior changes, sitting away from me on the couch, changing clothes in a different room, and so on. I start to wonder, am I being cheated on, or what is being hidden from me? I feel tremendous guilt for even thinking about checking her phone for confirmation, feeling that if I do, and I am wrong, there's no point in continuing to be married. After thinking about it for days, I decided to check in January 2020. Now, her phone is always close by, and I don't know the passcode. Luckily, her watch is accessible, and she made the code our anniversary. What I discover next is honestly horrifying. Sarah and Mark discussing her hookups with a coworker whom I'll refer to as Carl, them mocking me for not noticing what is going on, Sarah discussing how the idea of me touching her is revolting, and how she can't imagine having kids with me. We had been trying in mid-2019, so this especially hurt. Then I read the messages between Sarah and Carl. Those messages are explicit, and Sarah shows more affection for him in every way than she shows me now. And each message tells me a new revelation that hurts more. Apparently, a trip she said was to console a friend was really so that she could meet Carl. And she began changing in the bathroom so I wouldn't see the hickeys on her body. Her therapist knows all of this and says I should be made aware, but that she should be happy with whoever. I stay up till 3 or 4 a.m., reading these messages and taking pictures of everything. I don't sleep that night, my jaw clenched so hard all night that it caused issues for months. She leaves for work and I'm off that day. My first phone call is to a lawyer. What are my options? When I confront her, what can I say or not say legally? I wait for her to come home, reading over the messages to confirm it wasn't the worst dream I ever had. When I confront her, I tell her what I know, without revealing I had been in her texts. I tell her I spotted the hickey, this was a lie, but she had mentioned it in the messages, that I know she's texting someone. Sarah lies, trying to argue it is someone else that gave her the hickey, but finally, I read a message from her watch. I guess what I expected was for her to break down and admit everything. Instead, Sarah explodes in rage that I violated her privacy. The insanity and gaslighting of trying to convince me that I was the bad guy here blew me away. She stormed out of the house and disappeared for 3 days. No communication as to where she was, even though I asked her to tell me where she was staying so I knew she'd be safe. To this day, I only know a small part about where she went or what she did. When she comes back, she tells me she wants to try to fix things and spend some time together. It doesn't go well. I catch her sneaking off to meet with him once again, as she foolishly leaves the watch behind and I can read the messages in real time. I finally tell her in February 2020 that I contacted a lawyer. She insists she won't sign anything until we attend couples counseling. I humor it, but it goes off the rails immediately when, after I explain we're here because she had an affair, she argues my word choice, I guess affair was too strong of a word to use. She also lies about the fact that she also cheated on me before Carl with a married man, something I discovered at a later date going through her watch once again. She admits her plan was to find an apartment, then hand me papers without me ever knowing what is going on. She even tries to blame the whole affair on me, using minor disagreements as proof of my cold and uncaring demeanor. One example was that I didn't immediately scream at my parents for a Christmas gift she didn't like, or at her parents when they playfully made fun of her. At this point, the decision is made: I need to divorce her, as she will never tell the truth. We agreed Sarah would move out of our house, and I even helped her find an apartment, anything to get her out of the house faster. One day in March 2020, I watched the news of COVID come in and all construction work stops. Her apartment was almost ready but was being renovated. Now there's nowhere for her to go. I'm stuck in the house with her from March to June of 2020. For those wondering, she has enough legal knowledge to know that leaving would make her case harder and might still have to pay expenses. Look, those 3 or so months were hell. Trying to do my job and live in a house with a person who had wronged me and ridiculed me was unbearable at times. We tried, as best we could, to keep it civil and not scream at each other every time we passed each other. Imagine spending 90+ days cooking meals, passing by, and seeing no one else in the world but the person who ended your marriage and broke your heart. Every day featured me essentially locking myself in a room for 8 hours, then doing yard work or working out to avoid speaking with her. She moved out for the most part in late June once the world started to open up a bit, and had all of her items out by July. Knowing that I wanted the house, she definitely manipulated the situation to her advantage to avoid her being publicly shamed. Her family, to this day, doesn't know what caused the divorce. She didn't tell them the divorce was happening at all till after the papers were signed, and essentially forced me to pretend we were still together until then, at which point I told her to tell her parents or I would. They never asked me what was the cause, although 1 or 2 did wish me well. I never felt the need to tell them, as despite the pain and gaslighting she caused, I didn't feel the need to hurt them. Her parents never wronged me. Carl and Sarah didn't last. When I found out, Carl told her to leave me and be with him. But she tried to mend our relationship and he walked away from her, so she ended up with no one. Sarah and I rarely speak now unless it's absolutely necessary, which is rare. I've wondered at times if maybe I was wrong for not publicly outing her infidelity. The people who are important to me know the truth. I also never confronted, or spoke to for that matter, Carl or Mark, or her friend, who knew about all of this but never warned me. As for me, I found someone who was truly a good person, and have a great relationship. I've never told Sarah, as it's none of her business. Much like telling her family about her cheating, I thought about telling Sarah how well I'm doing, but I think that is just unnecessary.